Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Purple People podcast. My name is Kyle West, and alongside me is Adam Carlson. We're com-
Heyo.
we're coming at you guys after the Minnesota Vikings dominate the St. Louis Rams. We won 36 to 22, but I didn't have to tell you guys that because you know that already.
That's true. You had to have been watching the game because it was one heck of a game. I couldn't imagine it working out much better for the Vikings getting that lead early on. It was just made the game so much fun to watch where you didn't have to worry constantly.
Yeah, unlike last week's game, where we won, but it still kind of felt like we lost. This was one that I know everybody was absolutely excited for as it was happening. It was a legitimately exciting game and a good performance by the Vikings on all three phases.
Well, let's talk about who we're going to give our game ball to and who we're going to name our donkey.
Okay.
Now, it would be easy to give it to Adrian Peterson, but I'm not going to because he doesn't need it. He's a beast anyway. He's happy. He's kicking butt. Let's give it to a guy that's not getting as much notoriety, and that's Jerome Belton.
Hmm.
He's springing Adrian Peterson on a lot of these blocks. And for a guy that came in out of free agency, everyone's talking about how Spielman bombed in free agency. Well, guess what? He didn't exactly bomb. He got a gem in Belton.
Oh, yeah. I tweeted out that Jerome should be getting a contract extension at halftime during that St. Louis game, because he played just great all season. And I'm going, given my game ball, I'm going defense. I'm going Chad Greenway. He had 13 tackles and one sack on the game. And our defense played outstanding as a whole. And anytime you can have 13 tackles and a sack, Chad Greenway was all over the field, and I love that from him.
Oh yeah, he's one of my favorite players on the team. One of the few guys I actually went out and bought his jersey. So that's a lot for me.
Nice. I didn't know you had a Greenway jersey.
Oh yeah, it's one of the black on-field ones. Looks real sharp.
Oh, cool.
Let's start to talk about the offense, though, and you can't talk about the Vikings offense without talking about Adrian Peterson. 212 yards on 24 carries. That's 8.8 yards per carry. There's no stopping that man.
Whew, boy, no, there is absolutely no stopping. His longest was an 82-yard touchdown score on the day.
And that tied his career long, right?
No, it broke it. That was his longest.
Oh, nice.
Yep.
I love it.
The fact that we're even entertaining the notion that he's going to go for 2,000 yards after the injury that he had last season is remarkable. It's unbelievable what he is doing. We are witnessing a Hall of Fame career unfold in front of our eyes.
Well, let's hold off on that a minute because I'm going to talk about that a little bit at the end. I got my Adrian Peterson watch here, and we're going to go run over the numbers a little bit and let you guys know what he needs, where he's at, and everything. So we'll take a hold on that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the other running back, Toby Gerhart.
Toby Gerhart was my donkey for the week, just because it's you come in at the end of the game, you should be our cleanup duty guy, and you have -5 yards running. Come on, Toby, you got to step up your game, and you got to do better than that because we know we've seen you be a better back than that, and we expect you to go in there and clean up the game at the end for us, and you're just not getting it done.
He's the bigger back. He's there to clean it up. He's there to pick up first downs and grind out the clock at the end of a game. If he can't do that, I'm worried about his future as a Viking.
Maybe we'll sign Chris Johnson in the offseason.
Yeah, who knows?
He couldn't carry Adrian's jock strap.
I'm sure he could. It's probably not too heavy.
No, he'd fumble it.
Oh no, that's not good. Let's talk about. I got a little question for you.
Okay.
Who is the only player on the Vikings that caught every pass thrown at him?
John Carlson?
That is correct.
Yeah, I actually, after you said that, I was like, it's got to be John Carlson. 3 receptions for 17 yards. John Carlson equals production, people.
It's still not reaching the level of production that a lot of people thinks he needs to be, but I like seeing them getting him more involved, seeing him in on more plays, getting more blocks. The two tight end set is what the Vikings need in this run short pass game, and I am enjoying what I'm seeing.
John Carlson's getting healthy. He's getting more comfortable in the offense. You can see that Ponder is more comfortable throwing to him now, and he had some good blocks out there too. That that kind of stuff don't show up on the stat sheet. And maybe Mr. Carlson gets another shot next season with the Vikings, and then if it don't work out, they can cut him. That's kind of my thought process with him right now.
You mentioned Christian Ponder. No interceptions from Christian Ponder this week.
That's huge. He only had 131 yards, no touchdowns, but no interceptions. And him not turning the ball over and handing it off to Adrian and being smart with who and where he throws the ball to, that's exactly what we need from Christian.
Now there was one pass that probably should have been intercepted, and we were lucky that it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
But those kind of things happen in the NFL. You got to look at the whole number here, and the 131 passing yards, yeah, it's low. His longest pass was 14 yards. But in their offense, that's not what they need to do. They don't need to be bombing it down the field. They need to pick up first downs after the rushing doesn't work. He
And
had over a 70% completion percentage, and that's in this offense is what you need. And when he added the one rushing touchdown, that's
that should have been
icing
a
on the
sack.
cake. It should have been a sack, but he got away.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know who our leading receiver was on the day? It was Mr. Jerome Simpson with
It's
four
true.
receptions for 27 yards. So maybe the same can be said that we said for John Carlson. Is hopefully Jerome is finally getting healthy and is more comfortable in the offense, and we're gonna see some more continued production from him.
Yeah, we saw everybody get involved there a little bit. We saw Burton have 3 catches. Jenkins had one. Wright had one. It shows me that Ponder isn't afraid to spread the ball around.
And Ponder looked way more comfortable as this game was going on. You could tell that he was getting his confidence back. I believe his confidence had to be in an all-time low after the game that they had prior to this one, and you can see that okay, he's getting a little bit of his swagger back on the field, and that's what we want to see from him.
Definitely. Confidence is important to a quarterback, especially a young one.
Very important.
I don't have a whole lot to gripe about the offensive line this week. They played pretty much as I expected. Phil Loadholt got one BS penalty called that he didn't deserve.
And he looked pissed off after that one.
He was not pleased with that call, I'll tell you that.
Phil Loadholt is a big, big man. I would not want him angry and playing opposite of me on the football field. That's for sure.
No, and a lot of people are saying that Phil won't be back with the Vikings, but
Phil will be
guess what?
back.
He'll be back.
He's
They don't really have a choice.
Phil Loadholt is a good player. He's improving on his penalties, and he does get things. It seems like if something is going to go bad, it's going to go bad against Phil Loadholt, and a lot of the times it's not necessarily his fault.
It's true. I'm excited to see him come back.
Hmm.
All right, so let's move over to the defense and let's talk about them because there were quite a few standouts on defense.
Oh, can we start with Everson Griffin?
We sure can.
Yeah, him coming in and filling in for the injured Brian Robinson, and he played really good at defensive end, and then he had that one interception where he got to show off his wheels and run it in for a pick six, and everyone loves to see a big man with the football run it in. And I like Everson. He is going to be a great player for the Vikings in the next couple seasons, and he's already a good player.
Well, we may see Everson Griffin playing through the next 2 weeks because Brian Robinson was diagnosed with a sprained AC joint
Hmm.
in his shoulder, and we don't know if he's going to be available. He's going to be reevaluated later this week, and we'll know more. But for now, let's plan on him not playing.
Which I think is the safe bet, because assuming that we go on some miracle wild card playoff berth, I would rather have Brian for that possibility. And you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah,
Rest him now, get him better in case the playoff rush does happen. And the fact we're talking about a playoff rush blows my mind.
yeah, I know. There is absolutely no reason after the 3-win disaster we had last season that we should be talking about playoffs. But we'll get to that in a little bit. a little bit later on in the show. The defense as a whole, I think, played a really good game. Like I said, Chad Greenway led the team with 13 tackles and 1 sack.
Oh yeah.
Otherwise, you got everyone. Christian Ballard had a sack. Aaron Henderson had a sack. Brian Robinson had a sack. I mean, it's they're playing really good.
Now, Aaron Henderson did have a sack, but he still was disappointing to me in his run coverage and in his pass coverage.
Yeah,
The same can be said for Jasper Brinkley. My patience is wearing thin with those two, and I don't know if they're going to make it as starters. I don't know.
well, defensively, that's the that's the area I think that everyone pretty much agrees that the Vikings are going to look to improve in the offseason.
Oh, yeah, we know that everybody's eyeing Monteteo, but uh, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. We're moving clear up at the tail end of the draft now. I think the last projected area they've got us is drafting 19th overall. So I
Right
don't
now
know.
it would be number 20.
Yeah, right now we're at 20.
Yeah.
So now you got to be thinking we're in the range of what, wide receiver or uh,
I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. I actually have a 7 round mock that I've been working on,
oh
and I've got all the names down, and I'm putting all the finishing touches on it to make it look pretty. So maybe I'll post that up in a couple days.
oh yeah, of course. It's never too early for mock drafts, right?
Oh, it's always too early, but
Yeah,
I mean
that
we're talking playoffs, and I'm looking at the draft. That's not right. But we were talking about Brian Robinson being out with the shoulder injury, but we could see a player make a return next week, and that is cornerback Chris Cook.
which is huge. The guys that have been filling in for him have been doing a good job, but you can notice a little bit of a dip off from not having Chris Cook out there on the field, and I would love to have him back, especially if they're going to be making some kind of wild card playoff push.
Last year, the Vikings really struggled with secondary depth issues, and a lot of people were really confused because the Vikings didn't make a lot of moves in free agency or in the draft to help secure the corners. But what happened was really interesting because when Chris Cook's healthy, Antoine Winfield's healthy, they drafted Josh Robinson, they brought in AJ Jefferson. You've already got 4 corners that on most teams would be starters.
Well, and Antoine Winfield has found the fountain of youth out there for the Vikings. And it's really interesting to note that he is not practicing during the week, and it's not because of any injury that he's got. It's just Leslie Frazier knowing that at this stage in his career, he doesn't need to practice. Just save him, let him be healthier, and so he can just go on game time. And he's having another Pro Bowl season for the Vikings, and that is a big deal having him back there playing like that.
Oh, definitely, without a doubt, without a doubt.
Hmm.
And it's weird. The thing I was trying to say though is that to make a turnaround that fast to being one of the worst units in the league to it being strong, because we saw this secondary contain the wide receivers so well last week. We didn't see a whole lot of deep passes. Nobody busted anything truly deep.
Hmm.
They're playing this defense where they're making everyone beat them in front of them and get past them, and it's working great.
Yeah, the longest reception was a 26-yard one. So that was the longest that the Vikings allowed in the whole game.
Well, it's weird to look at the stats and see 377 passing yards from Sam Bradford and say, oh, they contained him well. But you got to look at it the other way and say, okay, Bradford had 55 attempts,
Well,
averaging 7 yards an attempt.
they're trying to play catch up. Minnesota had such a lead on them there for a good portion of the game that at that point Sam Bradford had to throw. Like that's just what the Rams offense had to look like at that point. They had to play catch up.
Right. And that's why his attempts were so
Yep.
high and his
Yeah,
yards are so high.
exactly.
So don't look at it as a knock on the secondary or anything like that because they played one heck of a game. Let's go into talking about the special teams because we had one of the best special teams performances I've ever seen. And a man that single-handedly won me my fantasy football game, Blair Walsh.
Blair Walsh is just the man. I mean, how replacing Ryan Longwell and coming in and just doing what he's done for the Minnesota Vikings is another thing that is just a big deal and a great decision by Rick Spielman.
He didn't miss. Eight
No.
kicks. 8 kicks. He made them all.
Yeah.
That's impressive. I know 3 of them were extra points, but 3 of them were field goals longer than 50 yards.
It is, and especially having him on kickoffs, where it's almost every kickoff is a touchback. Like, it's
Yeah,
because,
I want to remind you that Paul Allen, when he said that he would be surprised if anybody against the Vikings scored a touchdown off a kickoff, and so far he's still golden.
yeah, Paul Allen right on with that one. And hey, we made it past Devin Hester, and if Devin Hester isn't going to return one on us, I don't know who else in the league is.
I don't know, still got Randall Cobb in the last week.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. But
But other than that, we saw some good punting too from Chris Cluey.
he
That's
must have been
something.
thinking about punting a whole hell of a lot this week.
Yeah, I haven't heard much else from him,
Yeah.
so maybe he was practicing kicking some balls around.
Well, I'm sure Vikings fans have heard by now the comments that our special teams coach Mike Prefer made about how Cluey's antics are getting a little bit old, and he just needs to focus on the task at hand,
Oh,
holding
I'm
the
sure.
football and punting the football. And so that got back to Cluey, and he's smart. He's a smart individual. He knows he's probably went a little further than what he should have this season with some things. And so yeah, you'll see him reel it back for a couple of weeks. He's smart. He knows where the line is and not to cross it.
Yeah, so we had standouts on special teams. They contained the return game very well. As I see here, the Rams didn't return much at all. 2 kick returns, no average, no return really. 14 yards apiece. Punt returns didn't see much there either. So we're seeing great coverage by the special teams
Hmm.
units. All
So
right,
let's
so
talk about what everyone I think wants to know. Can the Minnesota Vikings make a push in the playoffs?
see, there's 2 different schools right now, and that's the playoff push, and that's the Adrian Peterson. And now it's weird because the two should go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
If Adrian Peterson comes close to breaking this record, the Vikings will be having a good chance of winning one, if not both, of these games against the Texans and the Packers coming up. So we got to look at it as the two things are one. Now let's take a look at the Vikings playoff chances because right now they have the number 6 seed in the NFC. If the playoffs started today, the Vikings would be in.
Which is almost mind blowing to even be thinking of that.
It's absurd. I didn't think we'd be
I,
in this situation. I had 7 wins in the season. We already blew past that.
mm-hmm.
You remember the guy on Bleacher Report that said 0?
Well,
And I wish he was joking, but he was absolutely serious.
that's Bleacher Report for you.
That's true. It's true. But right now, it's too tough for me, I think, to dissect what needs to happen for the Vikings to get in because there's too many scenarios. Right now, all I want to see is all the teams around the Vikings with similar records lose, and the Vikings to win.
Well, the mentality of this team is a reflection of Leslie Frazier, and Leslie Frazier's mentality of one game at a time. So
Right.
as much as the Vikings, players are smart, they know that, hey, we can maybe potentially make a wild card. But what they are focusing on right now, today, is the Houston Texans. And what do we
Definitely.
got to do to win that football game? And Adrian Peterson, he wants this 2,000 yards, and he wants it bad. You can just tell by the way he's running the ball and just how he's talking about it. He wants it, but he wants to beat the Houston Texans first and foremost. So,
Well, we gotta look at it this way too. Adrian Peterson has personal motivation for doing well in these next two games.
Hmm.
Not just he wants to break the record, not just he wants to break 2,000 yards. Houston is his hometown. He's
Oh,
going to have his family there. He's going to have his friends there.
oh yeah,
He's going
that's
to want to
right.
light it up.
Oh man, I actually forgot about that. That is an excellent point, Adam. Uh, my God, he's gonna rush for 300 yards in that game.
And then after that, it's the Green Bay Packers, which you don't need to know the Vikings Packers rivalry. And they're not really friends with each other, I don't think, on the field. Off the field, maybe, but on, definitely not. So you
And
are going to see a motivated Adrian Peterson. You are going to see the 2,000 yards get smashed. 2105, I don't know.
do you think he's gonna break the single season rushing record?
All right, let's break this down now.
Okay.
Right now, he's at 1,812 rushing yards. With 2 games left this season, if he can average 94 rushing yards per game, he will reach 2,000 yards.
I think it's a pretty safe bet to say that in the remaining two games, Adrian's gonna at least break 100 yards per game.
Okay, so we're past that then.
Like that is a bet that I would be willing to take.
Okay, Eric Dickerson's record is 2105.
Hmm.
So he'll have to average 147 yards per game to break that.
Which
Now,
is
when you break it down like that, it doesn't sound so bad. 147 yards to most running backs is a ton,
hmm.
but when you think of Adrian Peterson, 90, 94 yards is a lot to expect of a lot of running backs. But we're taking it as a gimme. We're like, oh, Adrian Peterson, 94 yards, he's got that in the bag.
Yeah, and not only that, but you have to factor in that this is Adrian Peterson, who is now running behind Jerome Felton, who we cannot state enough is allowing Adrian to suddenly break off 82-yard touchdown scores. So potentially the 100 yards that he needs to just get to 2,000 per game, he can maybe get most of that in one run. So then you're looking at it and going, okay, well then could he potentially get 40 yards through the remaining 3 quarters of a football game? Yeah, he can do that. So it is within the realm of possibility that he can do this.
And I've heard from a lot of experts saying that you're going to see these defenses focus entirely on shutting down Adrian Peterson. Now, I don't know if you were watching that Rams game, but they were focusing on shutting down Adrian Peterson.
Hmm.
There were so many men in the box, and they were running it anyway, shoving it right down their throats.
Although one of our coaches, who said that in their presser, was it might have been Bill Musgrave, who said that defenses, because of the fact that Adrian is now breaking really long 80-yard runs, are actually wanting to pull back a little bit from the line of scrimmage to have an extra guy back there for like extra
Oh yeah,
protection. In case he breaks past, they've got extra security in the back to hopefully stop him to prevent an 80-yard score from happening.
then you got a little safety trying to tackle him.
Yeah, which, I mean, he's going to stiff arm him to death and go for it in anyway.
I would not want to be standing between Adrian Peterson and the end zone.
Oh, no. I don't know, have you ever met Adrian or like seen him in person?
No.
I have seen him in training camp and just the size of him, the size of his arms, it's crazy. And watching him train is like nothing you've ever seen before because he gives it so much effort and you can't help but pull for the guy because man, you want to see him. I want to see him have that single season rushing record. That way you can go without doubt he is the best running back to ever play the game.
Will he win MVP or comeback player of the year?
I don't know if he'll win MVP because that always goes to a quarterback, it seems. And if the Vikings or they don't make the playoffs or they go one and done in the playoffs, I don't think he'll get an MVP vote. Comeback player of the year. It depends on what Peyton Manning does because Peyton's a quarterback and he's a quarterback that everyone loves, and if he makes it to the Super Bowl, well, it's going to be tough to vote against Peyton Manning. So I mean, I don't know what they're going to do, but you definitely he's in the picture for both of those, I think.
Now, I'm going to go out on a limb and say if Adrian Peterson breaks the rushing record, he will win MVP.
He should,
Now, the thing is, if he wins MVP, he will not win Comeback Player of the Year. They will give that to Peyton Manning.
which would be fine. I mean, I would between the two, I would almost rather Adrian be recognized as the league MVP as opposed to comeback player of the year.
Right, but the way I see it too is that if Peyton Manning wins MVP, we most likely will see Adrian Peterson be Comeback Player of the Year.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be one of those two, and it all depends on whether or not Peterson can break this record.
hmm Yeah, that's. I think you're spot on with that analysis.
And that's all I have for this week. Do you have anything else you'd like to talk about?
No, I don't. I think we've pretty much covered all that we can cover for the Minnesota Vikings this week.
All right, I'd just like to thank everyone for listening and remind everyone to stay classy, Minnesota.